Hello and welcome back to the Radio Gamescast. It's our games club this time. We're doing some games that we've been playing over the last month. I'm joined by my lovely cohort of co-hosts, Alex and Wyatt.
Hello.
Hello. We can do that all at the same time, and it helps to keep this thing rolling faster.
Yeah,
We're all very excited to be here, clearly.
we get to pause and just make sure that nobody has time to make a faux pas in the middle of a...
What you
You
don't know,
got
what you
me.
don't know is that Ryan is secretly holding a gun up to each one of us, making sure that we're here for every episode.
Yeah, from
It's
coast to
just out of
coast.
frame. It's incredible. He has such long reach.
Yeah, it's really something. All right, well, let's talk about some video games, and we're gonna kick it off with Wyatt. I believe you were ready to jump. You want to tell us?
Yes, I'm jumping. Speaking of which, because you do a lot of
Yeah, a
jumping,
lot of jumping.
in Journey to the Savage Planet. Just smooth, so smooth. Yeah, this is kind of an interesting one. It's a first person like shooter platformer. It almost reminds me of like a classic like N64 collectathon, kind of like Banjo-Kazooie or something like that. But kind of a more modern take on it. You crash down on this planet. You're supposed to catalog things for this wacky science corporation to see if the planet is good enough to be able to terraform so that we can move away from Earth. And so you're going out and you're cataloging different plants and creatures, and you're learning new abilities and traversal stuff and all sorts of things. And yeah, it's a wild, goofy time. The game makes it very clear right off the bat. It does not take itself seriously, even the slightest bit. There's in your Crest spaceship, there's tons of hilarious like advertisements, like fake advertisements for things, which are a lot of
Yes.
fun.
The live action
Uh,
videos are great. They
the
they've
character-
I
really tons
love that
live
type of
action.
genre where it's incredibly stylized 3D around you, and then that's a real person on the screen.
Yeah,
Just an FMV.
it's
The
it's very like colorful and kind of like a cartoony art style, and the animation is very like it has an elasticity to it. Feels like everything is just kind of made of rubber and is kind of moving around.
speaking of, I think my favorite advertisement is the rubber limb one.
That was- there's so many good ones, and they let you rewatch them, which is great, and they play them on a loop, but you can stop them if you get annoyed by them, so that's also nice.
Yeah.
I mean, the goofiness starts off right away. The character creator is great because
Yeah.
it's like, oh, which one is you? And it has a pictures of a bunch of intentionally just rough looking people and a dog.
And I have to ask,
Did you-
did anyone
who-
not choose the dog?
I didn't. I chose the guy next to the. I think I
Picked the
chose the guy
dog
next
at
to the dog.
first, and then when I realized that all of the sounds you're going to be making were like woofs,
What?
With dog
stuff-
noises?
Oh my gosh!
they went all the way.
Wow.
They went all the way. Once I realized that I was going to be hearing a lot of that throughout the game, I decided to change it because I thought it was a little annoying. But I do think it's very funny, and the fact that they
that's
added
That
it
just
in
made
at
it better
all
for me.
was great, which is totally understandable.
I was
Um,
really confused because I thought there was like a dog somewhere around that I was missing, and then I realized it was because I chose.
Oh,
the
it's
dog
me.
as the character.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah. So the humor is spot on in a lot of the. I would say my least favorite parts of the humor is like the AI buddy that you have. It reminds me a lot of like
Yeah,
Failsafe from Destiny 2, which was like funny for
Yeah.
2 seconds, and then after that, so you don't even remember who Failsafe is, do you?
What are you talking about? We interact with
it-
Failsafe this season. She gets a lot of character development.
Okay, you were getting some weird looks, so I wasn't sure if you remembered who that
No,
was.
I
or
was trying to
not.
remember the
Okay.
AI buddy. Are you talking about the ship?
Yeah, you like your
Oh,
ship AI reminds me a lot of Failsafe, where it's funny for like 2 seconds, and then she goes on for way too long, and it gets kind of annoying.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that was for me the one thing that didn't really land is I think the humor for specifically the AI buddy humor didn't hit in the way that I would hope it would, and because you're listening to it for so much of the game, like very talkative AI, and very sardonic and constantly mocking and whatnot. But in a way that's like the game takes itself so non-seriously that I no longer was able to take the game seriously because of it, which I don't know. It was a weird feeling. That didn't quite work for me, but I think the gameplay was fun.
Yeah, it feels really smooth, especially when you start getting a lot of the really cool traversal mechanics later on.
Yeah,
The second I get
I
any
would.
type of jump boost, I want to go back to that area to right after the ship was, so I can get
Yep.
across that ledge.
Yep.
Yeah, I was gonna say at first and Brian can test this. I was playing it on Discord here. I was like, I don't know about this. I didn't really like I don't know, something for me felt a little weird about the movement. But then, like, as soon as I got the jump boost and everything, I was like, oh, this feels good now. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, you get a double jump and then a triple jump and then like a charged jump, which is a lot of
Oh, wow.
fun as well. You get a grappling hook later on, and then one that can like essentially magnetically attach to different rails and like sends you through the sky and stuff, which is a lot of fun.
I'm
They
so
do a good
excited to
job
figure out
of
what's in that tower.
yeah, well they do a good job of showing you like, hey, there's more places you can go, but not yet, without making it feel really frustrating or like the game is really boxing you in at all. Because
Oh
there's
yeah, there was
still
It felt very
so
much
many
like
areas.
a Metroidvania, which I think is
Yeah.
a strength of it. Because yeah, I think the exploration here is good. I think the things that stood out to me as interesting were like I remember the advertisements for this game coming out, and them all being like focused on the humor and stuff, and then realizing that it was a Metroidvania and not like a weird. I thought it was gonna be like a short form comedy game, basically.
I do
Like I was
think the
expecting
comedy
also a high on
overall.
life thing, and
I do think the comedy overall feels better than High on Life.
I didn't play
I
High on
can
Life,
only.
I think the
It's
comedy
not-
works outside of the AI buddy, which is unfortunate because she's with
yeah,
you for
she's the
most of
most
the
ever
game.
present thing.
But the comedy outside of that, I think, is great. I think a lot of the like descriptions for animals and plants and stuff that you find
Yeah.
in menus is really funny. A lot of the messages that you get in your little email thing is funny. The advertisements are obviously pretty funny. It's just like the AI buddy, which is the most unfortunate part.
I think for me the problem with the AI buddy wasn't even the humor, though I wasn't a big fan of that. But I felt like it was just no matter what it was saying it too much. You know?
Yeah,
I
it
was
was
like
very
starting
talking.
to. I was starting to like tune it out, and I was just like, just let me get the next objective and go to it. Because
Felt like
I like
listening.
exploring and moving.
It felt like listening to bad stand-up comedy where the like
Oh.
performer is bombing and they keep trying to make the audience laugh and it's just not working, so it's just real awkward. Like I've seen that happen before, and
Yeah.
it is not a fun time, and it reminds me a lot of that. But no, I think I think I the best thing about it is the exploration. Just there's tons of really cool looking areas. They do a good job of teasing you with you can come back to this area later, and there's always like a nice upgrade or just a cool spot to look at. You can slowly start to discover really cool like shortcuts to get around and stuff. The other thing I really liked was the sandbox because they give you tons of little like alien goop and seeds and stuff
Yeah.
that are part of either combat or part of like traversal, which is a lot of fun. I loved using the like sticky goo to like lock enemies in place, like ones that are a little bit more challenging or ones that charge at you. You can lock them in place and then run around and shoot their weak spot.
Yeah, I think that I didn't
Ooh.
quite play far enough to have it let me go that much, but
Mhm.
I really would have liked to see more of that. And
I actually do think this has like a relatively slow start comparatively.
yeah, I think that was
Yeah,
part of the
I
reason
feel like I
was.
need to get further into the game, and I do want to play more of it.
This might have been my least favorite game this Game Pass, but my pick might have been there too. But we'll get to that. And it wasn't. I don't think it was anything about the gameplay quality. It was just a slow beginning, and I was just not really in the mood for it. But I do think I want to come back to this at some point. Just zone out and play through.
I would love
more
to
of
play
it, if not all
co-op
of it.
because I think the co-op would be a ton of fun for this. I don't know what kind of
Totally.
like co-op mechanics they have set up if it's a game that can be completed single player, but I think just like the goofiness of having a second friend there, I think would probably help things quite a bit. But
Yeah.
no,
I mean, I always enjoy a game with a friend, pretty much.
I agree that it is kind of slow in the beginning. For me, I feel like once I started to like, I don't know how I'm feeling about this. That's when I got like the double jump and the triple jump and the grappling hook, and then I was like pulled right back in.
Yeah, I think because I didn't get to the grappling hook. I got to the first double jump, and then I went exploring up a mountain that I don't know if that was where I was supposed to be, but I wound up in a double boss fight that was very difficult.
Oh, jeez.
Oh yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
And that was right after that is where I stopped. It felt like a good amount of time to put in, and I think for me it's just playing a Metroidvania thing like this that is sort of like mixed with a collectathon platformer is sort of that feels like what they're going for. I think for me the movement just at the start was just not fluid enough to make me stick with it beyond that's time. Fair. Though I do think I do want to play more of this. Like, this is one of the ones that I think I'm gonna, especially because it seems like this game is not very long. Like, I think it's 10,
it's
15
not super
hours.
Long. It also depends on how much, because there is side content. So it depends on how much like side content you want to engage in. But
yeah, the thing that would stop me from engaging with that side content is the AI buddy, at least so far at the point I was in, was not funny at any point, and was much more of a like, I had to kind of deal with it while other things were happening. I'm also not the hugest fan of the you have to go explode the cute animals.
Yeah, that was
what?
Yeah, because you kind of have to grind some of that out in order to get certain materials for upgrades, which kind of sucks.
Wait a second. For the carbon, I thought we just had to like feed those little pig orbs something. I didn't know did they explode or did they just like
you slap them and they explode?
No! Did you shoot them? I didn't shoot them.
Well, you have to slap one to get into the game, and that makes it explode.
There's no there's no way.
I never had to slap one. I fed it. I like shot the beam away from them, and they went to do it, and then I watched them, and then they farted out the stuff that I needed for the tool.
Maybe we're bad people, Wyatt. Maybe we're bad people that didn't question it.
I'm just like, no, you're too cute and round. I can't kill you.
That's
I didn't want to, but I tried slapping the crystal and nothing happened.
I thought it was for like the funny ha-has. Like, haha, isn't it funny that you're killing these adorable creatures?
Well, because then the AI goes, haha, funny that you killed the adorable creature right after you do it.
I forgot that line.
Ruining the joke. Well, now I feel like it's just.
But there is later on, you do have to literally lead them to their death into a meat wall. So.
Oh no!
Quite a few times as well.
It sounds like a jet turbine or something.
Yeah. They're getting blended. You're blending
and then kick them into a giant like mouth and a wall to open up a gate.
Oh my god!
I don't think you can work your way out of that one, Alex.
That one you are gonna have to do multiple times.
What if I grind myself up and then respawn and then pick up my corpse?
I don't think that's going to help you very much.
They won't eat you. You're not their food.
No, it's the cute little bird creatures.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that's my only like thing that I get a little bit iffy about because they're too cute. They're too cute.
Yeah, I that's the joke is that you have to kill these cute creatures, aren't you horrible? But they did too good of a job making them cute. And now I just
feel bad.
Feel really shitty. Yeah.
I don't feel funny. I feel bad.
I was like, oh god, are all of the aliens in this game going to be really cute? Thankfully, they're not, and a lot of them will attack you on sight, which is helpful.
I'm wondering about if they're gonna if they were gonna do that too cute thing for the sequel, but I think at least for the mushroom thingy, it's that sort of grotesque cuteness where it's just like, oh, I wouldn't mind punting you.
Yeah. Oh, I get that.
If that's a sentiment that can be shared.
I wouldn't mind punting you is a good way to put
it. Jesus. But no, outside of that,
I do like how your pistol is like a little water pistol that you have to pull the plunger back on, or like Nerf gun every time you use it.
Did anyone get like the power shot upgrade for it?
No.
I didn't get that far, no.
You have to push this little button and then it charges up to do like a power shot. The whole thing kind of opens up and like you can see it like pulsing with energy. There's a lot of detail in the art style. I think it being more simplistic allows them to add a lot of like cute little details to it. Again, just the elasticity of you slapping things. It's got this like Looney Tunes-esque kind of motion to it.
Yeah, we didn't talk about how good the game looks. I do think this is like a very pretty game. It's got a great like stylized art style that I like a lot. reminds me a lot of this is a weird call, but I think if you look at it, it is immediately clear. Satisfactory has a lot of the same sort of artistic styling, but less humor because Satisfactory is a factory building game. But I think the like character art is very similar.
Mm-hmm. And they
I
do a
did-
really good job of some of the later environments. There's a whole area where it's just a bunch of like floating islands that you have to jump to. There's one
stuff.
where it's in this like mossy like bog with a ton of gross like gaseous mushrooms and stuff like that. So a good variety in the locations too. I'm glad that it wasn't just an ice planet for the whole game. That would have been rather lame. Um, no, just the look of everything is they got it just right. And outside of the first two areas, which look kind of normal, they do try and get very like sci-fi with it. They look like some of the more bizarre like paradise planets that you get in like No Man's Sky and stuff, which is always nice to look at.
And I will actually say I'm relatively interested where the story is going from
Yeah.
the live action cutscenes.
Yeah.
That happen.
Essentially, I won't give away too much, but the premise of the story that's going on is that you've crash landed on a planet that seems to have some sort of like prior alien life on it, or some sort of like high-tech alien civilization,
Which was not the
and
plan.
which was not
There's
the
a
plan.
giant skeleton.
You keep getting these these like video messages from the science team back on Earth, and they're like, "Hey, like you're sending in all of the you're sending in all the stuff you're cataloging, and none of this was like part of the plan. We weren't expecting any of this, so we really need you to investigate specific things because we don't know what you found out there," which has been pretty interesting so far.
Yeah. I think that's a good overview of it. So I think unless there's not a ton to like the mechanics of the game to talk about, I do like we chatted a little bit about the special things that you get, like the baits and the whatever the goop is, which
There's
I still
also a
haven't figured out
seed.
the express use for, but
There's also like a seed that you can throw
Isn't-
on certain walls, and then you can use that as a grapple point, which is really fun too.
that's
Didn't-
cool.
Didn't they say the goop, the food or whatever was like canned chili or something like that? I can't remember
that's your
really early on.
item.
Well,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
it's
that's
food
in one of the
that
ads.
it's
Yeah.
goop that's supposed to be food.
Yeah,
Like tastes like different foods. You use that as bait for animals. So like if you wanted to gather up a bunch of the cute little birds in one area for no
And have the
particular
meat wall.
reason.
Yeah, the meat wall needs to eat, so you throw
Well,
it in
there's
front
a
of the
there's
meat
a
wall.
challenge. There's a challenge where you have to kill 4 of the little bird things with one of the exploding bird things, which I obviously didn't do because I'm not a monster.
Why would you do that, Wyatt?
But if you wanted to do that, because there's different, assignments I can feel the judgment right now, and I'm not here for it. There's assignments that you can finish that give you certain upgrades, which are really handy. So if you want to do something like that, if you were a monster and you wanted to gather up 4 of the little creatures and then kill them with the exploding creature, you can
for
use
science,
the
of
food
course.
for science. You can use the food, like the bait, to kind of get them all in one spot. Again, I wouldn't have any experience with that whatsoever, but I've
Of
heard that's what you're
course
supposed
not.
to do.
Of course not, Wyatt. Why would we think that?
No. No.
How fun, right? Well, I'm glad that we learned that about you, Wyatt.
Cool, a whole different light.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
am
know what you're referring
hoping as
to.
I get further in that the game does more of the the platforming segments because I think they're very fun, and they're part of the most interesting like level layouts they have. But yeah, this game is not what I thought it would be from the ads. I think it is pretty enjoyable, but just not what I was into playing at the moment, so I didn't get super far in it comparatively.
Maybe if you come back and you know what to expect, you'll
Like you
have a
said,
better time.
That
Yeah,
slow
yeah.
start hurts it.
I have a
think
feeling that
definitely.
I'll come back to this because they've announced the second. So I have a feeling when that is coming out, I'll probably beat this like a weekend or
Which-
two beforehand.
Which interestingly is in third person. I wonder if that's
Yeah,
just because...
is it? I did not know
Yeah,
that.
I was just wondering. Maybe that's just a platforming thing because usually platformers are a little bit easier in third person, but I felt like the platforming was perfectly doable here. So I'm very curious as to why, as to the perspective change. But
Yeah, that makes sense.
no, I think this is just a solid game. Like, It's what I call lean and mean. Like, it doesn't have a ton of content, but it's definitely lengthy enough for what you're probably going to pay at a discounted price or on Game Pass. And I think it'll get in and get out before it really gets too old, which I think is like kind of the sweet spot you want for something like this.
Makes sense. Yeah, how do people feel about this? Do they feel like coming back and playing more of it later? Is this high on the list in this round of Game Pass games?
I definitely
Or-
want to, especially once I started getting more of the traversal stuff. I'm really into it now. It has a really addicting loop of like going out and exploring a bunch of stuff, doing some of the assignments, and then coming back to your ship to get a few upgrades, and then heading back out again because it introduces a fast travel system between the different areas, which is really nice. Um, it's got a really nice loop to it where you can like go out a couple times and then come back, and then you're like, that's it for the day, and then you kind of walk off and do other things. I kind of like games where it feels like it has a good endpoint to it, and it's not constantly like keep going, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
It's
that
like
makes
this is a good
sense.
place to stop.
Suck you into the loop.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Um,
I feel. Oh, go ahead, sir.
and you can go.
I feel pretty similarly. I did, I don't want to say I shat on it. I said it was my least favorite game this time, but the bar's pretty high with these. There was none that I didn't like, and I think I would come back to this. I think it's definitely worth a play as a Game Pass game. Just to try out, see if you like. Go in with the knowledge that the beginning's a little slow, but once you get going, I just got to the part where I feel like I'm starting to get going, and that, of course, made me want to play it more. But I didn't get there till I was like, I want to move on.
I think the recommendation, if like the slow start might bother you, my recommendation is just beeline any like story specific stuff, because that's where you get a lot of the
Yeah.
like movement stuff. Don't do
This
a lot
is-
of exploring until then, and then I think that's a better experience overall.
Just to
Yeah.
wrap up my only remaining thoughts really is this is a game that I definitely think that whatever the sequel is, I haven't seen much about it yet, but I think that if it's just more of the same but fine-tuned even more, I think it could be something really good. And so
They said
I'm excited to see the sequel.
They said there's multiple planets in the sequel, which is kind
great.
of neat. So I'm wondering how that's gonna work. But
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Wyatt, we're not going to have you pick a next thing because we know what we're doing, and we'll talk about that at the end. Who else wants to talk about their game next?
I can
no
go.
one, no one wants to go.
Look, if there's more than 2 seconds that pass, I jump in. But Alex was
I'll
ready.
get the slap. Objection.
Objection.
There we go.
Like
That's
that.
yeah. The game that
Hold
I
it.
picked, or technically 3 games, but with the treatment that we give everybody, it's most likely that everyone's just gonna get most people are gonna get the one. Anyway, actually saying the title of the game, the Ace Attorney trilogy is on Game Pass.
Good old
So
Phoenix
I forced
Wright.
you all to play a visual novel.
And
that-
how fun,
you know-
Alex, because it's gone tomorrow
What?
from Game
It
Pass.
leaves
For
tomorrow.
gratuitous timing.
Oh no!
Which is great because I bought it. I owned a copy of this on Switch and had not played it, and this was my chance to jump in.
There you go.
And
I should point out to anybody who is listening today, I don't know when it ends, but it's on sale right now for less than $10.
Ooh.
Oh,
I might have to secure that.
I picked it up on Steam tonight when I realized it was going away.
Is it on sale on Steam for the less
Both,
than 10, or is
both,
it
yes.
competitive pricing?
so for
Anyway,
anyone who doesn't know, what is
anyway, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney is a visual novel series that's like a courtroom drama puzzle game, kind of. It is filled with a whole bunch of wacky characters. You play defense attorney Phoenix Wright, who at the start of the game, is his first case. Can't really talk about that too much more without spoiling a whole bunch of stuff because it's like this game is all story. Every character's name is a pun.
Yeah,
I
think
will
except
say
for Phoenix's.
odds are we will stumble into talking about some first case spoilers here.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty safe because that's really more about introducing
it's
you
mostly
to the
tutorial.
mechanics. Yeah.
Yeah, they get a little bit more involved starting with the second case on, and I think we can kind of safely ignore those for the sake of story talk, because it does move. Like that's the thing that surprised me with these, and I think calling them a visual novel is almost a little unfair to them.
It's almost
even
like
though
a logic puzzle.
It's more
in a
interactive.
yeah,
sense.
it's like because you got to remember these were like DS games, right? Originally, so they have like a level of puzzle preparation that goes into them, and they move very quickly compared
get
to many other visual novel type things.
Yeah, because they what is it like squeezing? Oh, how many cases is it per game? Is it 3 to 5? I think, or more than that, maybe.
Man, I didn't know Ace Attorney originally not DS, Game Boy Advance.
Really?
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
further back than I thought, and man, do they hold up. Yeah, that's surprising.
I
to me.
think that's a lot better on the DS with the touchpad for investigating.
I'm assuming the main
Wow.
screen you
Yeah.
have conversations, and then the touch screen is your like court.
Investigate the room.
Oh yeah, that's very
yeah,
interesting. So
evidence,
it
things like-
was 2001. There was a Game Boy Advance version for Japan, and then it didn't get translated until 2005 for Nintendo DS.
Oh. Huh.
Very cool. Yeah, neat little tidbit of info there. These games don't feel that old. Like this is not a thing that you're gonna play and feel like you're playing a super old game. Aside from maybe the visuals are a little bit dated. This is like a remaster, but it's like it is a minimum level remaster. Like it's no longer pixel art.
Yeah. Every reference too, and it feels like it's in its own like universe and time zone as far as the technology is confirmed or concerned.
Yeah, I think there was one mention of like
it's not too
a
ancient,
cordless
not too
phone
modern.
that like who wouldn't have
There's mention of a cordless phone, and then there's mention of sugar daddies, and you're like, okay, we're really jumping around.
Yeah, and the next case, somebody does have a cell phone, so like, I don't know, it's early 2000s, so it's the technology is.
It's a fun
pretty
time
much.
period to have a game in.
Yeah.
For all of its stuff. Yeah. Also, like some people might think for a Game Boy and DS game, not really kid friendly as you get further on it.
No,
Not as much as I thought, because
I
remember
play this as a
everyone I
kid.
know playing this as a child.
Of blood in the very first mission. It's kind of crazy.
There's
actually.
blood in this game, which was surprising to me. Not very much, but there is.
Was this T or was this E10?
It's a great question. I'll find the answer for that.
This is T. I'm surprised. Not to be like, I'm surprised my parents bought it for me, but like, I played this pretty young.
Oh yeah, I am certain I played Dual Destinies when it came out, so
There's also
probably
the
younger
fact
than
that
they intended.
some of the sprites have jiggle physics in this game.
Oh god, yeah, some of the sprites. So
April May
will
is
say,
one hell of a character design.
I really like the sprites and the character design, despite some egregious large tracks of files of cases.
Listen, you haven't seen the clown character yet.
Oh, I have, but not this playthrough, but later or earlier. But yeah. But I do really like the sprite design and character design because they are all super unique and super memorable, and like they try to pack as much telling you about the character into the sprite design as they can.
Yeah, it does. I think it's a sign of good character design when even in this game where all of the portraits are stills, you can almost like fill in the blanks of how they would move in your head just because they're so well realized, if that makes sense. It's like I imagine this character kind of carries themselves and moves around like this, and that's just a sign of like I can, when you're able to fill in the blanks in that way.
Yeah, I think it's really cool with how this game has like a character design visual language that is so strong. Especially later on in some of the, because I got a little bit addicted to this game, Alex. This was the last one that I played of our batch, and I am the furthest into it because I just kept playing it.
This, like, the later games for like Phoenix Wright Dual Destinies and the Professor Layton games were my like puzzle game addiction as a kid.
You know they had a crossover.
Yeah. Oh, I have that game. It's also crazy.
One last thing on the sprite design, I do also appreciate, especially the guy in the first tutorial case, how they like
Little
when you
Larry
begin
Nuts.
to like really interrogate them and they start to lose their composure.
Yeah.
There's like hidden secrets as they like begin to fall apart in their like character design.
Wait, what?
I just mean like especially like the first guy, like as he becomes disheveled, his toupee falls off and stuff.
Oh, that kind of, yeah.
And like I remember some of the later ones too have like funny reactions and whatnot as they begin to be cornered into their own guilt.
So I have a question. Did anyone feel like they had to take notes and write things down? Or do you feel like the game did a pretty good job of trying to keep all the information like as readily available as possible?
I think it was good enough for like the in-game notes.
I think it's a little bit of
The
both for
things
me
they
because
had.
I think
Same.
up
It also
until
goes by really fast that I don't feel like I need to come back to things as well.
yeah, like if I'm playing it all at once, I don't think I would have to keep notes. But there is in the cases that are currently happening, because like I think for most of us will have played the first case fully through. I think for in our time and maybe started the second case. I have finished the third and am currently like halfway through the fourth. And at the fourth case, there's like details that start to rely on you remembering things that are no longer parts of evidence. And you have to like call back to things that people have told you. And at that
or
point,
when cases link together. Oh,
Yeah.
that's fun.
and generally the game will like sort of remind you of these things if you're pressing for information. But at a certain point, it is kind of on you to remember some details. Like I'll use the least spoilery way I can say this is there's a bit that I just did that I was streaming right before this. It was like focused on who fired a gun, and one of the details is there's a photo of the person firing the gun, but you can't tell who it is. But you can see that they're holding the gun with their left hand. But you have a piece of evidence that specified in an earlier thing that they were holding the person's prints on that were on the gun was their right hand prints. So now you know it can't have been that person because it was not the right hand that the gun was fired from. So then you have this whole thing off of that. But you have to have remembered that. And you have to know when to use it. And I think that's sort of where it gets a little bit more challenging in the later steps is knowing like where to use what information
Yeah.
to not
Because to be
hit
clear,
the
too,
penalty.
There's that.
I'm not against this game like kind of requiring you to take notes at all. I think it kind of depends on the person because I feel like I definitely had to write down some notes for some of like the smaller stuff.
Mhm.
Like I was trying to think of like anything that isn't in evidence
Yeah.
or in your or anything like
Exactly.
that. Just write down any extra details because you never know when it's going to come back up again. I'm not against it at all. For these kind of games, I think it's really fun to have that kind of external
I
factor.
I do think for a detective game, like defense attorney game, this this thing handles dramatic irony so well.
Mm. Mhm.
With that, with whether it shows you the murderer at the very beginning or things like that, or whether you're able to piece things out and you're just like, oh, you're just a step ahead of where the game wants you to be in steps like that, but it knows you're gonna it it's there's so many satisfying gotcha moments with evidence. Like you were saying, it's like, oh, wait a second, right-handed.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
because
think
the game is
I
really
mean-
good at prompting you to hit those moments.
Yeah, and now the narrative is pretty structured. I mean, it is a visual novel
yeah.
at the end of the day.
And it's also a
But
linear
also
one.
it-
Like you cannot
Yeah,
make
exactly.
the wrong decisions here. I mean, you can, but you'll restart and just have to reload a save. So
Yeah, but at least for the first two, and I think if I remember right, some of the further ones, but not all of them, it does show you who the murderer is in like at the beginning of it. It'll have this like quick
literally
scene
the
of
first
the murderer,
image. Yeah.
Yeah.
and then
Um,
you'll go like sort of reconstruct how it all happened and the motive behind it and everything.
Third and beyond, that's
But
no
you'll
longer
know-
the case. It doesn't tell you
Yeah, okay.
the murderer from those,
Yeah,
but
I
it
couldn't
does
remember.
give you hints.
But it's pretty. Going into it, I remember most of the time you kind of know who the murderer is, and it's just about connecting the dots to
Because
prove
their
it's the
name-
murderer.
It's like because their name is an obvious murder pun.
Or it's just literally like, everyone else is innocent. There's this weird dude here.
Mr.
But
The Killer.
yeah. But anyway, it's rarely about like really piecing together who done it versus like how they did it.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting because I do. This is one of those games where, like, having not played Phoenix Wright before, I've only played a bit of Dual Destinies when I was actually like at the age that game came out at.
Yeah.
I played a bit of it and I never finished it. But I do remember enjoying it, but just being confused because it was the fourth game in a series that I hadn't played any of the other games in. And so this was like my opportunity to go back and play the original games. And I'm really surprised at like how competent the writing quality is for a game that is very comedic. And it's sort of like the main detective that you work with is called Dick Gumshoe. Like that's so stupid, but he's actually more endearing because of it.
It feels like because it's the fall season, which means my girlfriend and I watch a lot of Scooby Doo. It feels like
That's a great idea.
It feels like a Scooby Doo like mystery, but with like a genuinely good mystery that aims at a little bit of an older audience that kind of makes you think about it a little bit more. But it's just as goofy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's
at least for most
fascinating.
of the third case, like I was gripped trying to figure out what was going on. I was properly in the throes of Phoenix writing the whole thing. 'Cause, yeah,
I will
Turnabout
say that,
Samurai, very good case, very fun.
We did discuss right at the beginning of this that maybe it's not as kid friendly as we originally thought, and when I like originally played it and everything. But I will also say that it's pretty good for like all ages for the most part. I mean, some of the content of the story is a little bit more adult, but like the difficulty of the game and what makes it engaging and what makes the solving the cases fun. I mean, like this is a game I could probably hand to like, well, that might be a stretch, but my grandma would still like kind of understand the gameplay and enjoy the story and solving the mystery.
You know what I might say like describes this a little bit more than visual novel? I'd say it's more point and click.
Totally. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And I do think
Sort of a combination.
What goes along with that is that there are definitely some things that are leaps in logic akin to early 90s point and click game logic and things like that.
For me, there's a lot of moments. I think the leaps in logic tend to make sense. Like they're more sensical than like early Lucasfilm stuff.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of
I
moments.
remember getting frustrated a lot on trying to pinpoint things when I was playing on the DS.
I agree with you because I think what happens is you have a lot of things that are like, oh, I need to like at one point you have to go find a script in Turnabout Samurai from somewhere, and you have to either remember that there was a director's chair in one of the scenes that you were exploring earlier, and you can go look at the director's chair again. There's nothing in the art of that thing that would tell you that the script is in the director's chair. You just have to remember that, which thankfully I did, so it like wasn't a hard thing. But if I had like had a break between playing, that would have been super confusing. And I also think there's a fair number of moments where you're like during the cases where it's very specific about which things you need to press or interact with, even when other things seem to make sense.
Yeah. It's like, what are you talking about? The fingerprint is right there in the picture. I'm pressing the fingerprint.
That was my thing.
No, there was like in the corner of the fingerprint specifically for some reason. Ugh.
There's like one where it's like, where would the killer have had to stand? And what I did is I was like, oh, well, they had to be directly in front of this area. But no, you need to click in the area, which is behind where the photo was taken and not in the front where it actually was, because otherwise it's confused and thinks you're picking the hallway and not the scene where it happened. But stuff like that. It's like there's no punishment for getting it wrong. It just is a little bit finicky.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the story in this game does really well being, timeless. The mechanics of this game are pretty much timeless, but there's some just like quality of life kind of things like that are less timeless.
Yeah. It's also relatively simple. Like, this is not a game that has a lot of mechanics. It is basically you're going to be moving a cursor and pressing the A button. That's pretty much the entirety of what you do. Maybe
you press the B button sometimes to get out of something.
You press the B button, you press the right bumper.
The mechanic is reading literacy.
Yep. And that can be quite fun, but if you're expecting anything too advanced, like there's no... My standard for Capcom visual novel point and click type things is Ghost Trick. Love Ghost Trick. I think it is one of my favorite games of this genre, and there's nothing as complicated as Ghost Trick in here. Like, there's not times where you're doing the whole shifty thing and exploring the ghost realm and all that. There's much more actual regular detective stuff that can be a little bit dull at times, but it tends to pay off very quickly because it moves quick. Like, this game does not make you wait around to continue the progress. I like a lot.
And just like it's actually amazing how difficult it is to come up with a good mystery, like one where the audience isn't, 2 steps ahead of the story the whole time, but also one where logically everything kind of comes into place and makes sense. And it's like, what bits of evidence do you take out of that to give to the player without giving away too much? Like, it's actually really hard to write one good mystery. And here we have a trilogy of games that has like dozens in each. It's kind of amazing, actually.
Yeah, I'm just really glad all the Phoenix Wright games are now like readily available, because I didn't know it, but the Dual Destinies and Beyond trilogy is also easily acquirable on modern platforms now.
I believe some of the more spin-off games, I can't remember.
Great Ace Attorney also is readily available, which is very cool.
Yeah, for these to become lost media, I think would be akin to the Mona Lisa burning.
Yeah, I'm surprised that there hasn't been more of these recently. I think this is a underserved genre in modern stuff. That's like the less supernatural Danganronpa.
I would love to see more of these.
I do wonder if it's a situation of like it's hard to come out with new ones because it is so difficult to write a good mystery, and it's just they don't have like enough to make a full game. You know what I mean? Which is totally understandable because again, it's really difficult to write something not only where like the mystery is there, but you're kind of relying on the player to solve the mystery, which is another like
yeah. You can only use the statue as actually a
complication.
clock so many times before it becomes
Yeah.
Which, to their credit, they allow things to get really wacky, which means you can get a lot more creative, and you have more liberty to do weird shit with your mysteries. But even after a certain point, it's like, what do we got?
Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts on Phoenix Wright? Ace Attorney trilogy.
Excellent music.
Oh yeah,
music.
The music is a bop. Yeah.
It really gets you pumped.
Yeah, it keeps you just locked in and engaged the whole time.
I'll say for a game with no voice acting, I didn't really notice it because it does the clever thing of keeping the text boxes the right length so that you're always kind of pushing forward, so you don't really notice the lack of voicing because you read it really fast.
Also, it's a game that, for at least the courtroom scenes, you really want the text boxes because there's a lot of it involves going back and forth through exactly what they said.
Yeah, in the cross-examination phase.
Find where they lied and find what evidence you have proves they lied.
There is an art to the pace of text boxes where like you don't want them to be too short where it feels like the dialogue is getting cut up too much. But if you have long ass boxes of text, it gets real dull real quick. And I think they hit the
what
right.
I love is they use the text boxes to show personality too. Where good old Mrs. Old Bag, which is the actual name of a character who is an old lady that is a crotchety security guard. When you interact with Miss Old Bag, she'll do the thing when she gets mad where the text box just flows into the next one and it keeps going, like it doesn't pause at the end of the text box. So it's just rambling really fast, and it's really funny. I found that very fun, and there's lots of little stuff like that that's very cool. Like they do absolutely everything they can with like the tools that existed at the time to make the stuff work, and I think it's really cool how that worked out.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I'm definitely gonna buy
still
it
laughing
now
at
that
Miss
I
Old
didn't
Bag?
realize it's.
Well, I'm thinking about like I feel like the names they come up with are like the names that I come up with as a joke when I forget the name of a character,
Yep.
and I just give him like a shitty nickname. That's why it's so
No, you
funny.
don't forget them.
That's just what it. There you go. Now
The
I
thing
don't have
that I
an
love about
excuse.
it too is it's not like the game treats them non-seriously, but it treats them as they sound. Where like
I
there are
Yeah.
moments that Phoenix Wright gets
Edgeworth has
confused with his
trouble
own
with
name.
these names.
Yep.
It's just like, oh.
Like the judge didn't know
Miss
if he was able to
Oldbag.
say Miss Oldbag because he was like, "Is that offensive?"
it also like a lot of these characters, at least their like starting point is sort of like a caricature. So first off, they're really memorable, and you get the name that goes right along with it, and it helps it be memorable. And also, you know, not to say stereotyping good, but you know, these sort of caricatures already immediately tell you something about the character.
Well, no, it's good because it helps you. Because like I'm really bad with character names. If you watch our show, I basically come up with a nickname for everyone under the sun because I can't remember. Even in games that I really like, I can't remember names most of the time. So it's nice that you have names that stand out so much that I don't need like a character list on the other monitor just to like remember who the heck I'm
Look,
talking about.
nobody's gonna forget Miss Oldbag.
Yeah, exactly.
Not possible.
Exactly.
Or Sam Manella. Sal Manella, sorry. That's his
Salmonella,
name.
Larry Butts.
hmm hmm
It's great.
So good. So good.
Or just Judge. I don't think we know his name.
Yeah.
I don't think it ever comes up.
Because it don't matter. He's the judge.
Yeah, I don't know. I had a great time with these. I think this is probably my personal highlight of this batch. Just because I wasn't expecting to get as pulled into it as I did, and I have no intention of stopping. So this has kind of forced everything else that we've played off
my
the
God.
list for me to finish more Phoenix Wright.
Wow. Yeah, I'm definitely buying this before it goes off.
I already
Yeah.
did. It looks
Also,
like
heavily
for
recommend
anybody
picking it up
listening on
Switch
Tuesday
as
or
well.
anytime, October 8th, 2024, that sale ends. But it'll probably be on sale again. And it's like a $30 game in total.
Oh yeah, because you don't have to worry about like the Switch's poor performance or frame rate things because
it doesn't matter.
on this game.
If it runs on the Game Boy, it runs on anything.
Can the Game Boy run Crisis though?
So
Probably better
honestly,
than
I'm
the Switch
tempted.
can.
The PC version has a soundtrack available, which is very cool because
Oh, there you go.
great music.
There you go.
Yeah, super fun game. All right, Alex, you weren't ready, which means I'm gonna steal it next, so we can talk about Age of Mythology last, and go
boy.
ahead and talk about Kunitsu-Gami, Path of the Goddess.
Yeah.
This is one that I just barely squeezed in, hopefully enough playtime for because of computer woes.
This is also this game is
But
a
I do
little
think I like
confusing
it.
to describe, because it
How
is.
do you describe it?
I think the best descriptor is this is a PS2 game, but in modern day. And I mean that with all the love possible. I really like Kunitsu-Gami.
Yeah.
It is a Capcom action game. It reminds me of the era of stuff like Okami and Beautiful Joe and that era of things.
It does have references
God
to
hand.
Okami, too.
Oh
Yes. With tower defense added on top of it. And it works really well.
Yeah.
I think this is like one of those things where either one of these parts would have been fun on their own, but together they're much more enjoyable. The control scheme takes a lot of getting used to because of the fact that it's really weird.
yeah.
Like your dodging is on the right, like pressing in the stick.
I remapped that.
Yeah.
Which
immediately.
you totally can remap. I actually
Yeah.
got used to it being there, just because you don't really tend to use that stick to look around very much. At least all the time. Like it's much easier to just lock onto things and keep going that way. But generally, like you have a combo system that relies on you doing like Kagura dances using your sword, which are very cool, where you do like essentially a shrine maiden has summoned you into being at the start of the game because there's some type of creature that is rampaging through this mountain. and it is taking over and destroying towns and villages, and your job is to carve a path forward and retake everything and rebuild it. Because there's also a sort of like pseudo town building. It's not quite town building. It's more just like using resources to repair things between missions, and that'll give you stuff at the next mission. But yeah, it's a stage-based action game that has tower defense elements, is like the simple way to put it, and I think it's very fun. It's the type of thing that I think there's not an easy equation to like, or a game to equate this to, because it's just
there's nothing else like it.
Yeah. And I think for most people that's the selling point of Kunitsu-Gami, is the fact that it is very different.
That and the
Balloon's
art
tower
style.
defense, but you play as
And
Wukong.
it's gorgeous. It is very, very pretty.
It's that kind of look where it's like clearly disgusting and gross, but also like captivating and almost kind of like beautiful in its
like
own
this
way.
weird
Kind of like
kaleidoscope effect on
Yeah.
kind of stuff that looks
Yeah.
really good.
It reminds me of it reminds me of the feeling that I get when I look at like H.R. Giger like artwork, where it's like this is
Yeah, totally.
disgusting and like kind of uncomfortable, but also I'm like fascinated, and it is like it has its own kind of strange beauty to it that you can't quite pinpoint, and it's fascinating.
It reminds me of that feeling I get when I wake up at the dentist's office.
I can't necessarily agree
I don't
with
think
that
we have
one.
time to unpack that.
I don't know want to unpack that, to be honest with you.
That
I
one
would
might be
call
a
the
little
art
bit of
style
a
almost. I'm just gonna move on because otherwise I'm gonna get stuck
yeah,
on
yeah.
that.
I'm gonna get stuck on that for a
Um,
long time.
I would almost call the art style like psychedelic Japanese myth.
Yeah,
Yeah, totally.
absolutely.
It absolutely is what's going on.
It's really cool. It's really unique too. I mean, like I can't think of another game that looks like that.
Yeah.
Not fully, at least.
I think it's super fun. There's lots of different like creature types for you to fight. There's a good number of boss fights as well, where like every couple of stages you get a boss stage that you get to go do, which is like one that is less focused on the tower defensey thing. You still have the sort of tower defense characters, but instead of you placing them like towers, you just have a bunch of them, and they're like around you, and you gotta command them, almost more like a
Yeah,
like
you
brutal
can place
legend
them, but
style.
It's not
almost.
useful.
Oh no.
No, it's really fun. It's really fun. It
You
is
kinda-
not like
it's-
clunky.
it's-
I was gonna say, I hope so. I've had a history of having phenomenal difficulties with like the commanding units type thing, or
Yeah, so it's really good
like
because
other...
after a couple of stages, you get a thing where first few stages you have to manually place everything, and then you sort of like put them into place because it's tutorializing over a few stages. I think at the first actual boss fight after the tutorial ones, so this is like maybe the second or third real boss, you get a thing that is like offense and defense mode, which is just on your triggers, and you like pull everyone to you and to go forward or put everyone back to where they were, and like hold the point. And so it's very easy. It's basically like one
There's
button
also
press.
a button. There's also a button that allows you to go right to what's her name again? I forget. See, this is exactly what I was talking
Well,
about.
it's because
Shrine
they never
Maiden?
say the names. I just call her the Shrine Maiden. She does have a name.
The Shrine Maiden. There's like a button that allows you to just bring them right to the Shrine Maiden if she's like under attack, and you just need everyone there, which is really
There's
cool.
literally just like an attack and a defend command. That's pretty much it.
I think
And-
I think I was a
Pretty
little
easy.
overwhelmed with having to manually place each unit in like the first level or so. I'm just like, oh, this feels like it's gonna get really confusing to me really fast. And I just stick to the
Yeah, I don't think I.
myself, but I don't think that's gonna be viable.
I did find in the
for too
first
much
few.
longer.
I did find in the first few levels that like, no matter where you place your guys, even if you set them really far back, you can just kind of take out 70 to 80% of the demons that walk in through the Torii gate just on your own.
Yeah, that,
So I
that
feel like-
stops being a thing eventually.
But I feel like that in a way kind of can create bad habits in a sense where it's like, oh, I can just put them wherever and then deal with it myself. And I assumed, I was like, that's not going to be something for
Yeah,
too
like
much
2
longer,
levels
but-
later, it's gonna start throwing flying enemies in, and that is much harder to deal with.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Where you only have like one combo that will hit flying enemies, because the way that your action combo system works is you have your light attacks on X and your heavy attacks on Y and whatnot. Your heavy attacks function less like a combo end and more like a thing that does a specific function. So like
Yeah.
one of them is really good against single targets, one of them is really good against multiples where you like move really far and hit really wide but for less damage. One of them is you launch yourself into the air and that's the one that hits air stuff. And then
I'll
you've
say
also
it
got
took
some
me
special
a
attacks.
it took me a good bit to get the timing down for those different
Yeah,
move
same.
versions.
It does take a little getting used to for the combos because they're a little bit less
It's definitely
fluid.
not fighting. You don't need fighting game reactions to get them in.
Yeah,
I
it's
will
like
say-
somewhere in between a Devil May Cry and a regular game. Like it's not nearly as input intensive as Devil May Cry, but it's a little bit more than your average action game, I'd say.
I will say one thing that caught me off guard almost immediately, and it wasn't bad once I kind of got to terms with it, which didn't take too long. The camera is kind of wonky because they
I agree
start
with
you
that.
off on a side view. So I
Yeah.
was like, is this a side? So wait, what? And then eventually you figure out you get to move your camera around. But it was just bizarre to start the camera from like a almost like a 2.5D like platformer
I'd be
perspective. It was
really
very
interested if
odd.
you could play this entirely as a 2.5D game.
There
Just,
are
like,
levels
keeping
where
the
you
camera there.
can.
There you
I
go.
get the sense they wanted it to change per level. I do agree that it can be kind of clunky. I actually think this game probably would have been suited by having a fixed camera and not one that you adjust.
Yeah.
You know what?
In a lot of
What
places.
was weird
but-
about it? It felt, you know how with a camera when you use different focal lengths for like a profile picture, it can make the face look a lot different depending on which like lens you use and that kind of thing. It felt like it was like really wide for like no particular reason. It felt it made everything seem a lot smaller than I think.
I think they wanted like a
It was very
diorama look,
odd.
I think is sort of what they were going for.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Because I've been playing Echoes of Wisdom at the same time, and it's that similar kind of like I feel like I'm looking at like a diorama, like you said. It's very strange. It's not like an issue. It's just something that visually
Yeah, I actually
took
think
me
it
a
looks
little
really
while
good.
to adjust to.
But it
Yeah.
does take adjusting, and it makes it a little hard to. I think the biggest sort of challenge point I had with the game is understanding the range at which I will hit things
Yes.
with
Yeah.
combos, because especially at the start when you're just figuring out the controls, it's a little hard to tell that like it is not meant for you to be super easy to hit things. Like you are meant to be dodging a lot, and you're meant to be moving around and letting your tower people take a lot of the aggro here and not just 1v1ing everything yourself. But until you kind of get that hammered in, I think it is very tempting to just treat this like an action game. I think you'll have a not as great time doing that. But you do get cool things. Like once your few A through stages, you unlock some cool features. One of which is you get to add these like charms to your sword guard, and those enable special attacks. And you can swap between a bunch of them when you unlock more, but it's stuff like, oh, now I have this cool fire attack that I do in a huge radius that's really cool. And you can do them frequently. Like, it's not a long cooldown thing. It's a very quickly building resource. You get a really fun one very early after that does, like, buff every tower person in range, villager, in a big radius around you, and they go into, like, basically berserk mode, which is very fun. And when you combine that with the like attack command, it just make everyone go buck wild for a little bit. It's very, very fun. A lot of cool stuff like that. You get an upgrade system for each of the individual villager types that you can have, which I think that's really fun because it's also very specific in that you can respec them anytime you want. So if you're having trouble with the level, you can go back and reassign and be like, oh, I want to really buff up my archers. And they get cool things too. There's like some of them unlock special attacks for your villagers that will do like, oh, now my axemen have a cool fire attack as well, or now my archers shoot like bizarrely fast or much further and cool stuff like that. That I actually had a lot of fun messing with, and I'm excited to see where they take it.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff like that.
Great little touch. Every villager has a name.
Yes.
Which is
Oh.
crazy. Just like a nice little detail. What I don't know is like if a villager dies, do you just not see that name again? It's almost like a
Yeah, I don't know.
like permadeath in that way, which could be kind of
Oh no.
interesting if a little dark. I was also it was really nice to see like all of the villages and stuff on this mountain have been completely wrecked by this like demonic presence, and you can spend a big portion of the game actually is like repairing
Yep.
the villages and like repairing different spots of it that get you rewards,
You
which
just gotta go hang out in them afterwards.
I love. I love a game when there's a giant catastrophe and part of your job is to like rebuild the settlements. I don't know why. It just scratches an itch.
It kind of feels
for
like
me.
this game went through the Breath of the Wild moment, and how we were pining with Breath of the Wild for a thing where we could go like rebuild some of the towns. This has that instead, and it feels very cool. It's sort of a great fantasy.
I will
It's-
also say
it's-
it's satisfying when you beat a level and like you watch, although like the visual design is kind of not as cool, but you watch all of the demonic corruption from that area flow out, and now it's like restored to natural beauty.
Yeah, you get a rad dance sequence.
That's right. We have the
Oh, yeah,
Bollywood
breaks it
ending
down.
each level.
All the like dance move sort of things are really pretty cool in the cutscenes.
Yeah, they look
Oh,
great.
and that extends to your move set because they describe it as like sword dance attacks, and it very much feels like you're in a dance routine while also wielding a sword, and it looks so cool.
Yeah, it's really awesome. I think there's a lot to like here. I also love that like your collectibles and rewards afterwards can just be things. Like you just get little snacks that they don't do anything, but you can go read
Oh.
about the specific snacks, and it'll tell you the history of that snack and where it comes from and what it tastes like. And it's very funny.
There
Some
seems
of the
like there's
rewards-
quite a few upgrades that are just flavored too.
Yeah, there's a bunch.
If I had a complaint, the UI for the like command screen is like it looks pretty, but it's kind of intrusive at times. I felt like there were times where I was trying to command a unit somewhere, and because they have these giant like symbols at the top to show you like what unit you have and what their health is, it just takes up an unnecessary amount of space at the top, and it's like, no, I'm trying to put them like behind that like bit of UI, and it just kind of blocks the screen, especially because you can't, at least I didn't find during my playthrough, you can't like rotate the camera around the whole map. It's really just like specific to where your character is. And so
Yeah,
there
it
were
depends
times
on
where it's like I
where.
can't
You can
see.
like kind of do it, but not very effectively.
And so I just wish that the UI, it looks nice, but I wish it was a little bit smaller just so that you could see a little bit better where you're placing your
Yeah, I
units,
agree.
which got annoying.
I also think the tutorial is more confusing than I would like it to be, because they like disable a lot of the prompts on the UI, so you don't actually know what buttons do what, because it just kind of hides them during the tutorial. And those show up later, but it's because if you press them during the tutorial, they don't do anything. But it's very confusing because it'll introduce the concept of multiple villager types to you before you actually have the ability to place multiple types of villagers, which is a little confusing, because I was like, oh, well, how do I place an archer when it just told me I could place both archers and woodsmen, but I can only actually place woodsmen because I don't have archers yet.
And on the note of the tutorial too, this is something that's like kind of hard to explain, but it's they're explaining everything to you without, in my opinion, without having done a super clear job of what your actual goal is. They're like, you can do this thing and you can do this thing. But I don't think they do a great job of explaining, like, you have to get the Shrine Maiden from here to here.
Yeah, that's one of the last things that they touch on in the tutorial.
and they
Yeah,
don't-
they
they
tell
don't
you
really
every step
explain that.
along the process before they tell you that's the goal.
Which is really confusing because it's like, okay, that's a neat idea. What do I do with this? Why do I want this? Which
Yeah.
was a
Yeah,
little
I had like
frustrating.
moved all my little guys around expecting that it was going to be a tower defense where the enemies move towards the Shrine Maiden, which in a way they do. But you also have to move the Shrine Maiden to the end goal. So
Yeah, I
then
Which is
had to
actually,
move
like,
really-
that.
Which is a really cool bit of the game. Like, it's actually very interesting, but it is confusingly laid out in the tutorial that those two things interact the way they do.
Well, it is this like inherently interesting, like, it's a tower defense game, but the goal that the enemies are trying to get to is getting closer to them each wave, which is like inherently fascinating. And I feel like there's just a very simple way you could have explained that, very like succinct way you could have put that right at the very beginning, and then the rest of the tutorial would have made
I
so
think
much
they
more
could have
sense.
put that in the first tutorial level.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
I think they maybe
Um,
made the tutorial too long. I think in
even
general
if-
there's a complex things here, but the actual loop is not that complicated. Like the loop is defend the maiden and get her to the door.
Yeah.
And
I feel like it should have been
simple.
a more minimalist tutorial that like,
Mhm.
here's your goal, here's the things you can interact with. The rest we're gonna let you kind
I
of
wish this had
figure
an
out on
Echoes
your
of
own.
Wisdom tutorial.
That
Oh,
maybe
dude.
I think that maybe that
Absolutely.
very first fight where the big I don't know what you call it, slug dog tick
Insane
spot
monster
of
that's
ink
really cool.
thing,
that like rips its
comes out.
snout up. It's just disgusting.
Anyway, when you encounter that first thing, you know, it's in that area that has all those NPCs, which I guess is showing off maybe some of the NPCs later to come, or
Mhm.
you know, little tower defense guys. But you can't control any of them. It's not super clear what you do, like what they do, and the priestess never moves. You're supposed to defend her, but she never moves. So I kind of wish maybe they just had a little bit more there to tell you exactly, to show you a bit more of what the regular gameplay was going to be like.
Well, it's so that still is a mechanic in the boss fights. So
True,
those
I guess,
boss
you
fights
know,
are
I
still
did-
kind of defending her.
I
like
did
that.
play through one of those, so that was similar, but it's not really clear that's what's going on. And
Yeah,
I don't
I think
feel
it's
like it
almost
was
more of
very
a
clear
problem.
what
They don't delineate the
villagers
like
were doing.
different types of stages. Like there are some that are not. You do the tower defense thing. You just do a fight, or a boss fight or something. So, yeah, I think that's very fair. Overall, I had a really good time with this, though. I think I definitely intend to finish this one, especially because I know it's a relatively reasonable time frame to finish. Because I was having a really good time with it. I think this is a great one before Phoenix Wright ripped me away.
It's fascinating, and I'm really happy that like a large publisher and developer like Capcom are still making just weird, bizarre things like this. And obviously, it didn't get the same kind of marketing budget as like a, you know, a Final Fan. Sorry, what was I trying to say? Street Fighter 6 or something like that. But they're still giving it a fairly big platform, and they're even sticking it on Game Pass and stuff like that. So I'm glad we're still making weird stuff.
Yeah. I'm really glad that Capcom took a risk on this. I hope that they consider this to have paid off, because it seems like it was relatively cheap to make. And
there's not even a lot of voice acting. It's mostly silent, which I think works for the kind of story that they're telling, and I'm
The whole
also
vibe.
sure was a cost-saving measure.
Yeah.
I want to be able to play more of this to get into the especially the automatic bit, to find out hopefully that I'm not going to have as many problems with it as I feel like I'm going to have still.
It's not far
early on
in,
in
so
it,
I'd
but
recommend playing for another hour or two, and you'll definitely get there by then.
yeah.
So it's in the first 2.5 hours that you get that stuff.
I could definitely see this game not being up some people's alley, but I think it's unique enough that, especially as a Game Pass game, definitely like worth it to check out. For a
It
couple
also
hours.
runs really well on Steam Deck, from what I hear. So potentially great Steam Deck game if you have a Steam Deck.
There you go.
And are looking for something fun and a little bit more of that like PS2 vibe. Which what I mean when I say that is just games that were a little bit more wacky and kind of hard to put into one genre, and trying a lot of different things. And I think that's just I'm very happy that we're getting more of those again.
Yeah, they didn't spend 10 years and $6 billion on making those games. So
400 million.
Look, we don't need to beat Concord up already. Concord did that to itself.
It's hasn't that man suffered enough?
It's true that
it's already in
that
the
is kind of
ground.
punching down at this point.
We're just pissing on its grave. At
Concord's
this point.
went from being kind of funny to now just really sad. All right, let's.
I can't believe they have an episode of TV coming out and the game.
That's
I don't
gonna
want
be
to spend
so interesting. All right, let's move on then. We only have one game left to talk about.
Yeah.
Alex, that's your cue.
Alex, take it away.
I'm so sorry. I forgot it was me. My brain was just completely gone out of my head. Okay, I picked Age of Mythology Retold. I think that was the acronym on the end. But
Yeah, you got
whatever
it.
the remaster of Age of Mythology was. I played this game a lot as a kid. It was one of the earliest games I can remember playing over at a friend's house. I'm not much of a strategy game fan, but I remember it being a lot of fun because it's more than, I don't know, Age of Empires or something where you're summoning up a bunch of just foot soldiers and whatnot, but also there's heroes of myth, mythological creatures, gods, godly powers, and the factions are sort of your I don't stereotypical picks for mythological factions. You've got Greek, and you get Zeus and the Olympians and their powers and those heroes of legend, and there's like Norse mythology, Egyptian mythology. I think there's even more. I think I'm missing some, but it's basically a strategy game similar to something like Age of Empires and other that type. I'm not a huge strategy game person to compare it against some of the other ones, but it's pretty fun. It's got a pretty defined few campaign structures where you play as each of the factions: Greek, Egyptian, and I think there's 3: Greek, Egyptian, and Norse. And then, of course, there's your sort of free play, or maybe not free play is maybe not the best term, but just smaller matches against bots or against multiplayer or against friends. So I had a good time with this one. It maybe was not as wowing as I remembered it being as a kid, and I think that is because as an adult I was like, oh yeah, this is just a remaster of a game that came out in, I don't know, 2003 or something. So a lot of the design is still sort of based in that.
And those cutscenes, those
yeah.
adorable
I love
cutscenes.
them.
They're amazing.
Originally came out October 31st, 2002. So I would say that a lot of the design of this game feels exactly like a game from 2002. Be that good and bad.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting point of comparison for us because we've done an Age of Empires game on the show before. We did 4.
Yeah,
like a year ago,
yeah.
something like that. 2 years ago.
I think even a little sooner than that.
So you're the man who keeps making me play RTSs.
I think Age of Empires was
this one.
like literally like right before I came on the podcast. I think is when you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
I feel oddly about this one because I was actually expecting, because I also played a lot of this game when I was younger. I was expecting to like this more than I did. Going back into it,
was the same way.
I think the problem is that I've played Age of Empires 4 since then. I think that legitimately is like a big problem to my enjoyment in this game. There's stuff I really do like. Like, I think the god powers are really fun. They work a little bit differently in the remake than they did in the first one. I like that. They're more usable here. I like the way that like tech and like choosing your god works, where you kind of like get to specialize. Like, oh, I want to support Ares, or I want to support Hermes and whatnot. In the early tutorial missions, you get to like pick sides and figure out what you want to build. I think the story is interesting enough for an RTS story. Like, I'm not expecting a ton. This isn't StarCraft, but it's serviceable enough.
It is what it is.
It's as you would expect. It's there to string together the action.
Yeah, and the thing I really like that this has is the villager AI preset, where you can choose the game and have the game automatically manage your non-combat stuff.
I completely forgot about mentioning
those
that,
little pie charts.
Yeah, because it auto assigns all your villagers for you, and I'm like, not having to worry about that and being able to like change it on the fly is so easy and nice to do.
I really agree, and I had forgotten about that. I don't know how. But yeah, maybe if I was like a hardcore RTS person, I'd be like, oh, but micromanaging my guys that cut down lumber. I don't know how StarCraft players thinks. But
I don't think most of them like it.
Yeah, exactly. So like, I don't know, as sort of a casual player who's interested in this game more because I'm interested in like the mythological creatures elements, not that I don't like a bit of an RTS, it's easier to just say, oh, we need more lumber, just go get more lumber, or do whatever, just bring me a little bit of everything, and you don't have to physically click on that unit and tell it where to go, really.
Well, it makes it a good starting point, I think, for anyone who's new to strategy games and it isn't, or even people who are into strategy games but aren't used to something like this, where it is very micromanagey, which is something that we had mentioned in our Age of Empires 4 discussion. It's very like if you're standing still for 1 second, you're screwed. Essentially.
Yeah,
Explains why I was screwed.
around the time of Age of Empires, maybe 2 or something like that. And I think comparatively to the Age of Empires of the era, this one, if I remember right, now we're talking, of course, 22 years ago, and I played it probably a little after that, but I was pretty young. I think this one was a little more simplified, if I remember that, or a little bit more like quality of life features, because I think it came out a bit later.
Yeah, I believe so.
There's some conjecture in there based on fuzzy memory, though.
But yeah, I had fun with this. I think the mythology part is obviously like the really strong thing here. If you really want to play an RTS with that mythology theming, you don't have a lot of options, and I think this is by far the most enjoyable in that line of things if you're not looking for pure history.
Oh yeah, there's very little history.
Yeah, very little history, very much leaning into the whole... I like myth units being a thing is just really fun. I like that I can have my centaurs running around shooting people like they're ballista.
This
everyone
more
that's
than
an
other
army with a Hydra, go for it, dude.
Yeah, this more than other RTSs, I feel like your foot soldier kind of guys, little archer kind of guys, truly expendable because they're really just there to support your Hydra, your Griffin, your
heroes
Cyclops,
and
whatever. Yeah,
the only reason I was able to make it past the tutorial, because I have not been able to complete the tutorial for Age of Empires 4 when we played on the easiest difficulty.
Is because you don't have to out yourself.
Is because your mythic units or like your hero units don't technically die.
Oh yeah,
you
can
talking
slap
about the fight with
things.
the Krakens at the very beginning?
Uh-huh.
Okay. I was
to be fair, I almost failed that one too because I did not take them seriously when they said make more units. I did like 5 more and didn't keep doing it.
Because I had a hard time. I had a hard time at the very beginning because there were like so many things that I forgot that I was supposed to be doing, and I was like, God, this feels like more difficult than when I was playing a bunch of Age of Empires 4 a few years ago. And then I was like, oh wait, there's like 6 different things that I forgot that I'm supposed to be doing.
The real-time strategy games are just vehemently not my thing at this point. They have proven themselves that they are not for me. I hate micromanaging stuff so much.
It's definitely a thing for me where like once I play a game, like if it's a new game and I play it enough, I kind of get into a pattern, then I'll throw on like a podcast or a YouTube video on the second screen and just play the game passively unless there's like a big story thing or something where I have to pay more attention. This game, no. That second screen is off. I need
100% focus.
0 distractions. I got horse blinders on. I need both brain cells working at absolute peak efficiency. and that can be really fun. But that also means that I can only do like 1 or 2 sessions, probably only 1, and then I have to take a break because I feel like I just ran a marathon.
I found I was like I would do one scenario mission and I would be tired afterwards, like physically tired.
Oh God.
Yeah,
because of this game.
Yeah, I didn't have quite that much trouble with it, but I do definitely get what you were saying. I only played through a couple of them, and I don't want to jump to my full review and thoughts too fast here, but I feel like I was fairly excited for this because I remember fond memories of the original. And I think coming out of playing this, not that I didn't enjoy it, and I think a lot of people definitely would, especially if you're more into RTS, especially if you like the original, you're getting the same thing, basically. But I came out of it wanting Age of Mythology 2 rather than Age of Mythology Retold, if that makes sense.
Yeah, same. I agree with that a lot. I hope there is an Age of Mythology 2 coming, because if it plays more like Age of Empires 4, but with the Age of Mythology stuff, I think I'd be very into.
However, I will also say, just out of appreciation, I'm glad that it has a remaster that's available. I hate it when games become hard to
lost media.
Exactly, hard to access. Speaking of hard to access RTSs, I almost feel like now that I'm an adult and I've played these games, I think if you want a more hero-focused RTS, I really like something like Warcraft 3 better. But that game is inaccessible now, so I can't recommend it.
If you want something with hero units in it, I don't think it has as much of a focus, but either of the Halo Wars games has
Oh, I
some
haven't
cool
played those.
like kind of hero units that you can throw out there, and they're a
Have
little
we?
bit more expendable than they are here, but they're also a lot of fun. I
Have you ever
remember
played those
in the
for the podcast?
no, I don't think.
No, we haven't.
Wait, didn't we play the second one like a million years ago?
We can check the playlist. I don't think we did. I don't remember us. I think you and I might have played it and talked
may-
about it. I don't think
I
we
may
actually
pick
did the
that
episode
someday.
about it.
I don't think that's going to be too soon, but that may be something to keep in the back of my mind. Just out of
I do love
curiosity.
them. I Halo Wars I absolutely had a lot of fun with.
I've never
and
played those.
Heavily recommend if you're especially only on console player, you use a controller for everything, play Halo Wars. It's a great, like, relatively accessible version of a
I
RTS.
like RTS games, but I'm not into RTS games that much, if that makes sense. Like
Mhm.
I'm not a Turbo StarCraft player. I just kind of like them casually.
Same,
So,
yeah. No, I love me some StarCraft too, but I am not a competitive player in any means, and will never play online.
Yeah,
and play tons of
No,
arcade
thank you.
modes. Love the
Exactly.
arcade stuff.
Absolutely no, thank you.
like I'll play Dawn of War with some friends, but I would not play against randos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think I really agree with you. Overall, I had fun with this, but I don't think I really intend to play a ton more of it.
Yeah, I don't know if I will. I think maybe if I'm feeling the RTS itch, I'll come back and play it some more, because I do have fond memories and I do really like some of the ideas. But
this has actually made me want to play Age of Empires 4 more, because I intended to play a little bit more of that
Anytime you want to
game.
play, let me know. I'm down.
play some Age of Empires.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did have fun. It was just it's interesting going back to like an older RTS like this and remembering that era of games, but with this like new sheen on top of it, and playing through it. All right.
Yeah.
it probably, well, I don't know about controls wise. Never mind. I was gonna say it probably runs well on the Steam Deck, because it doesn't. I don't think it takes too much to run. But
I
then
think playing this
don't
with a
know about
controller
controls.
might be a little hard. I'll throw
Yeah.
that out there. You maybe could use the trackpads, but RTS with trackpads is real.
yeah,
real
that
difficult.
sounds like a
Oh.
recipe for.
God, this is
disaster.
bringing back
Though I have
more
played a
bad
lot of
memories
Dwarf
of what
Fortress
happened
on
in
the
my
Steam
run.
Deck.
There was I somehow on the first story mission, I managed to lose my scout unit immediately because it was killed.
Oh, so did I.
And I couldn't find I couldn't find an option to make more of them in any of the barracks or things or.
Oh yeah.
I don't think you could. I think
Oh,
No, I'm
great.
pretty sure it took me a while to like research it, but I'm pretty sure I found it. Yeah, okay. So if you have the temple, you can spawn in the Pegasus, and that's a
Mhm.
scout unit.
Okay.
yeah.
So it
I
replaces whichever
got
one you
those, but that's
lost.
because I went with Hermes. I don't
Mhm.
think you can get those if you didn't go with Hermes.
I did get the Pegasus.
So-
I got
Yeah,
I had
once
three
I got
of
the
them.
Pegasi, I was able to have them.
the second they went over like the first enemy village I encountered, they were all shot down and killed.
They
You gotta
might
get
have
the-
an equivalent
Hermes
for
has a
the other.
respawning one. That's the great way. You get Hermes, you collect the respawning one, and then you let it go get itself killed, and then you pull it again. 'Cause it
Different gods might
respawns.
have different scout units. I'm sure, but
Oh no! If you cause well, I had Pegasus, but I think I went with Ares at some point because of the thickness fog. I'm just like, ooh, if I don't let people rebuild
is
their
cool.
structures, that's.
Cygnus is very cool. But yeah, I like
I
those
don't know,
fun like
it's-
decisions about which god to support. I think they're cool. I do think this game has a really not nearly as good of a tutorial as Age of Empires 4.
nope,
It
I'm
doesn't
actually
do a great job at preparing you for things that you have to do.
I just
having
had a bad
played
time.
couple of RTSs from that early 2000s era. Comparatively, pretty good.
Comparatively pretty good
Yeah.
to that era,
Yeah,
but in
exactly.
the modern
I think one
Exactly.
thing,
Not a modern.
especially for new RTS players, they need to stress the importance of building walls a little bit more.
totally.
I really,
Absolute game changer.
I really kind of feel like this game has to be by the same people as Age of Empires, right? I'm not certain
Ensemble
of
did
that.
all of the old ones, and then the remaster for 2, the remaster for this, and 4 were done by a different studio. I'm pretty
Okay,
sure.
I just mean the original Age of Mythology is by it's a spin-off of Age of Empires.
It's
I
Ensemble,
almost
right?
Yes, it is. I almost feel like, not difficulty-wise, but just gameplay-wise, it almost expects you to be an Age of Empires player.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not like picking up difficulty-wise to like put you in the action the same way, but it doesn't spend a ton of
World's
time
Edge
talking
is the
about
studio
those
behind this.
typical RTS mechanics, and I don't know if Age of Empires tutorial did at that time.
Which is
But-
interesting because once you get into it and you compare it to other Age of Empires games, I think with the god powers and stuff, it does make it a little bit more accessible than the other ones. But because they don't tutorialize it very well, it doesn't seem like that on the surface, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it also Mythology scales up really quickly. Like you end up building a lot of houses and a lot of units are under your control at once very quickly.
Well, when you
it
are
gets
able to
a little
spawn
bit big.
titans onto the map eventually,
Yeah.
you have to ramp through the foot soldiers a little faster.
But which just it makes it tedious to do when you're having to deal with so many of those things at once.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like the tutorial is almost pointing out the difference between like an Age of Empires and Age of Mythology more than it is teaching you from the ground up.
Yeah, and I also think like comparing this to like, I think the closest sort of touchstone other thing right now is maybe Total War. Some of the Total War Saga games have these mythological units and stuff, or Warhammer is basically mythology if you accept that there's insane Warhammer things involved as well. And I think those do a good job of representing those like types of like crazy magic. But yeah, I don't feel like this is the most likely RTS for me to return to, but I did have fun with it. If anything, it's making me want to actually play Warcraft 3, having not been someone who's played a lot of Warcraft 3, to try it out.
We can talk about that another time too.
Totally.
I got stuff to say about Warcraft 3.
All right. Any
Good
other
and bad.
thoughts on Age of Mythology? Retold.
Yeah.
Good music.
No.
Yeah.
There was
good
good music.
music.
I forgot.
Good music. Visuals
love all the
still
little-
look dated a little bit, but
Yeah,
I
they
love
do.
all the
They-
call-outs from your little villagers and everything.
Yeah.
I don't know what
Yes.
they're saying, but I love it so much.
I'm a woodsman.
yeah, I do love that. Like they shout out when you click to move, you hear like the heroes shouting out in their own voices and
Zug, zug.
whatnot. It's very fun.
Sorry, wrong game.
Job's done. Done. All right. Well, I think that's it for our overview of our round of Games Club games. All of these are available on Game Pass, except for Phoenix Wright, which is leaving tomorrow. And by the time this is aired into the podcast platform, it will be gone.
If you are
But it is on
like
sale
one
on
viewer watching
every
on
platform
Twitch
for a while.
right now, you still have a couple hours. You can get through the first case or two.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, let's move into shoutouts.
I got one. I'm
got
gonna do
one?
a bit of a dual shout out because I think it's very funny. Well, not funny, but interesting. First shout out is Plucky Squire. Great little game. I think it could go a little bit further with some of its ideas and some of its mechanics, but I think it's very charming. It's very cute. It does a great job of kind of having that 2D book aesthetic and then transitioning into a kind of 3D platformer aesthetic and kind of keeping everything consistent, which is really nice. Tons of cute little things about like turning the page in the book to access different areas and to like you can there's a bit where you turn a page upwards a little bit and it like slides a creature down from one page to another to solve a puzzle, which is really cute. Really well done. And then the second half is amazingly a game that references Legend of Zelda and is clearly very inspired by Legend of Zelda. Came out a week or so before Echoes of Wisdom, which is really, really fun at the moment, and it's super interesting and it's very different. And the Switch cannot handle it whatsoever, which is very, very unfortunate. But two really good like Zelda-like games in the span of a couple weeks, so that's really nice.
Yeah. Echoes of Wisdom, also great. It's come out and
Absolutely.
it's very good.
Absolutely.
Which is
As
great
long as
to
you're
see.
okay with wildly inconsistent frame rate the entire time.
Totally.
Well, if you're playing it on the Switch, probably are.
All right, who's got something else?
I'll shout out. Can I shout out something? Yeah, I can shout out whatever the hell I want.
I
Great
can
line
shout
of
out whatever
thought.
the hell I want.
Stopping you. No one's stopping you.
All right, I'm getting up on my soapbox. No, I'm kidding. Shout out, like a preemptive shout out. I don't know if it's going to be good, but I'm very excited. There's a new edition of Kill Team coming for Warhammer 40k. I mean, it's its own game, but new edition of Kill Team coming. Hoping it's a lot of fun. It's their like skirmish game equivalent to 40k. Really enjoyed the last edition. Very excited for the new one. Hoping it lives up to those expectations. We'll see you in the next week or so.
All right. Alex, you got something waiting in the wings?
I think I do. The song Mushroom Men from the game Mushroom Men,
Pretty great.
where part of the song it just goes men.
You know,
Yep.
sometimes that's all you need from your little mushroom song. All right, I got one too, and is this little guy? Is an Analog
Hell
Pocket.
yeah.
It plays Game Boy games through Game Boy Advance, and a bunch of it can emulate it, or not emulate because it's a open FPGA. It like hardware configures itself to be different systems, and you can get little adapters. It has a cartridge slot on the back that you can. If I had a cartridge with me, they're all in the other room. I would show how it works, but you put a cartridge in there and it plays it, and so you can have like, if you want to play the TMNT Game Boy Advance game like I so often do, you slap the cartridge in there and it just works, and that's pretty
That
great.
thing looks like a freaking dense little nugget.
I mean, it's the size of a Game Boy Advance, or not Game Boy Advance, a regular Game Boy like DMG. And it's got the back buttons of the
It looks
Advance.
swanky.
Wow.
It's got 4 face buttons instead of the 2 that Game Boys had, because it can play things like up to SNES or so as well, if you have the know-how to configure all that stuff, and obviously rip your own ROMs and whatnot. And get them running. It does work. It's also great for arcade systems. This is one of the few things that can really do a good job of basically working as a functional arcade form of like emulation or whatnot. Because of the hardware chip, that basically it's not software emulation, it's hardware emulation. And that works way better for arcade stuff in particular, which is great to play a lot of that old arcade stuff.
Can you get the UFO games on there?
I don't think so, because I don't think they were encoded in a way. UFO 50, also excellent game that came out, but that is basically like NES era games made by a bunch of indie developers and put in a package of 50 games. Really cool. I don't think they're actually coded like NES games, so I don't think they would actually go on here.
Damn.
But yeah, you can get tons of cool stuff on this. They're relatively pricey, but it seems like they're more readily available now. And from what I've been playing with this thing, it's very worth it to have. It also has a little dock, so you can like dock it on a TV and play with a controller if you want to play some stuff through your thing and not have to go find a scalped Game Boy player to put into your GameCube.
See, now the only thing we need is a clamshell version, and then I'm like 100% sold.
Dude, I would, if they had a clamshell version of this, I would buy another one.
Oh my god.
I would get another one, because I think the clamshell version, that Game Boy SP, there is a company that makes a like emulation focused retro console like that. But it's like it's a software emulation console, not hardware, which I want to be able to play cartridges and stuff like that. And it cannot, but it's still a very cool little thing. Yeah, great console. All right, that shout-out's done. We have a little bit of time here, so I want to quickly run through something else while we're all here, and just quickly go over the Sony State of Play that happened, that we didn't get an opportunity to talk about because we've been doing too many other things. We had a lot of scheduled stuff this week.
Forgot.
Wow. I kind of
Yeah, that was last week. That was not very long ago.
Oh, we watched that together.
Yeah, it was not far back. But I do want to quickly run through it because it was relatively. I don't think this needs a full episode because it was a 30-minute show that had a lot of follow-ups on existing stuff that I don't feel like we need to talk about. But there were a few big announcements.
Surprise drop of Concord 2, which was very exciting.
Bloodborne 2 as
Totally,
well?
yeah.
Wow.
Everyone loves the surprise drop of Concord 2.
This
I
time
think,
it's good is the subtitle.
man, we gotta stop beating up on Concord. It's already dead. It doesn't need us to beat up on it.
Sorry, when it's already
Aw.
dead, it's an easy target.
It's gone. It's in the dirt. But yeah, there was a couple of things shown here that I think were very cool to talk about.
Dragon Age Veilguard had a cool gameplay showing. We're in a world where the new Dragon Age game is actually looking pretty sweet. What a timeline.
Yes.
What
Yeah.
a timeline.
I'm really excited. My partner is a huge Dragon Age fan and is getting less excited or more wary as time goes on because it looks different than the previous ones. But I
mean,
like
it's
the way it looks in different.
technically not an open world, but it's an open level.
I think
That's
I
how
think
the rest were.
It's
too.
mission
kind of-
based, yeah.
I think
It's
to
like the
me-
older Dragon Age games.
BioWare games are less defined by like how they handle their combat and more just about story, character, and
Who you can
Yeah,
romance.
and speaking of Veilguard, while we're on it, I should mention the reason that we did not announce Game Pass games for this month is because we're going to be playing Dragon Age Inquisition. That is the game. We'll probably talk a little bit about the others because I think a fair number of us have played the other games and want to talk about them. But our next month is we want to do a little bit of a deeper dive into Inquisition specifically, being that it's the last Dragon Age game, and compare it with Veilguard when it comes out. So that's our next.
I won't
game.
be pretty soon.
Well, the last Dragon Age game before the one that's coming out.
right.
The other one's not out yet. So it's true as of now.
It won't be for long. Silly.
The latest Dragon Age game.
And then we got to get into it and see how we think about Veilguard when that comes out as well. But yeah, the State of Play had some cool stuff in it. Namely, Astrobot DLC was the first thing, and Astrobot
Free.
Update.
That seems
DLC,
so
yes.
soon after that game came out, which is cool. But
It's great.
was
I love
surprised.
that we're getting Stellar Blade and Helldivers. I think that's a great call.
Oh my god, I
Those
missed
two
that
in.
completely.
I think it's very silly. I like the speedrun levels thing. I think it's going to be very fun. And I'm hopeful that this leads to maybe more possibly paid DLC or just more stuff from them. Because I think it looks really, really fun and cool. And I like that game a lot. Next up, we had The Midnight Walk, which is the
Looks so
Lost
cool.
in Random devs. It's like a claymation sort of platformery thing. It looks like we don't have a ton of info about this, but it looks really cool. The art style is gorgeous. Very like Tim Burton
Yeah,
Coraline
It
is
reminds me
what
of
comes to mind when I see this.
I was thinking of that movie, whatever, 7 or 9 or something like that.
Yeah,
Seven.
I know what you're talking about.
9.
Nine?
Yeah.
9, yeah.
9 was wild.
Great movie.
Yeah, totally in that vein, and I think this looks amazingly fun. I think it's we don't really know what type of game it is. It might just be like a walking simulator thing, but it looks pretty enough that I'm into it. And Lost in Random was relatively good, so I'm excited to see what they would do.
Yeah.
You know what's great is when large companies like this listen to their fans. You know, when we think about PS4 exclusives, there's one game that everyone wants a remaster of. They want nice high
Knack 2.
frame rates, crispy new visuals. You know, again,
We're not
that
there
was
yet,
really,
White. We're not there
was
yet.
really
You don't
lost
milk,
in a-
you don't need
in
to milk
a-
it
in a
yet.
specific time.
We're not deep enough in yet.
Oh, we're going in order. So
Yeah, we're going in order. I always
Whatever
go in
I'm
order.
looking at is in a different order than you.
I know,
Yeah, you're
same.
looking. You're probably looking at the website and not the video.
I'm looking at the PlayStation blog.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
we'll
they
get
just
to
list
it. There's
things
a
by their order of their own
remaster.
importance.
We'll get to it, but there's a remaster that
just
literally
gotta build
every
some
single
hype.
person.
Let's talk
has
about the
been-
fun
has
new
been
stuff
excited.
first. We have Hell Is Us is the next thing they showed
That's
off, which
right.
looks like an actiony, horror-y, very very cool looking. The way I
Love
said
the
this is
enemy
Soul
design
Stranding is what it makes me think of
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
Death Stranding aesthetic mixed with like maybe Souls-y gameplay. We don't have a ton to go off of here. But very cool visuals, awesome enemy designs. I love the like light weapons that you have. Seems great. Hell Is Us.
I love a good
Very cool.
poncho in a video game, and this is a very
Good
nice
poncho.
I'm doubtful it will be. I almost hope it's like a Metal Gear stealthy kind of thing almost. But
Yeah, it doesn't
That
seem
does
like
not
it.
look
like
It
a
definitely
stealthy
seems
game.
more actiony.
It doesn't either.
I think
It
you
doesn't.
do
does
have
not
Death
look like a
Stranding,
stealthy
maybe,
game.
if you want that.
Yeah, I don't think it will be, but maybe I'm just hopeful.
Yeah, it looks very cool. Then we saw some more of the Metro VR thing, which looks very interesting and cool. Not out yet.
It's a good series for a VR game. It's a
Yep.
good pick.
And then next up, we
Definitely.
saw Arcade Chronicles, which I learned is actually, this is nothing to do with the original Arcade. It's not like an original Arcade thing. This is functionally
was-
Arcade 2.
So curious.
Which I'm really interested how this is going to go, because Arcade 1 notoriously crashed and burned after it traded publishers a couple of times. People really liked it when it came out, and then it just immediately got panhandled by the publishers, and people did not like it after that. So I hope this is good, because if we get actual Arcade back, that'd be really fun.
Looks neat.
I don't know how much confidence I have that we will. So
Yeah.
otherwise,
It's
looks
on-
cool.
it's an online game, right?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
is online. I don't know if it's only online because it's Arcade Chronicles and not Arcade 2 like I would expect an MMO to be.
Yeah,
labeled.
and I feel like the
Um,
combat looks a lot more like an actiony Souls-like kind of game. So
Yeah, Arcade was pretty actiony, but this definitely seems a little bit more like story focused and whatnot. So I think this might be somewhere in the middle. Like it might be more of an RPG thing, but that's entirely speculation.
it does call it an online action RPG and not like an MMORPG. Right?
Yeah, so I'm wondering if like maybe more of like a Neverwinter-y thing or party-based
Kind of
co-op.
Or even
I'm
something
kinda more
like a-
into that idea.
So am I.
or maybe something like Wayfinder could be kind of interesting, like a more
Totally.
online Wayfinder.
Yeah, I could see that being very cool. Next, we saw more Pal World, which is really funny because Pal World is in the middle of an ongoing
Yeah.
lawsuit with the Pokemon Company over apparently patents, which none of us are lawyers. We can't tell you how that works, but it's not over copyright like everyone thought it would be.
Yeah, we'll see how
No,
that
it's over. Well, it's over. What copyright? Not copyright. It's over the mechanic.
It's
of
over
catching
patent law,
features?
which
We
they
don't
haven't said
know
what patent
exactly
it's
what
about.
it is yet.
Aw.
Yeah, so we don't know what patent this is in relation to, but it's a patent
thought
and
I-
not copyright.
I thought I heard
So-
somewhere, which may not be the most reliable source in the world, but I thought I read somewhere that it was related to catching the actual.
That's what everyone thinks, but we don't actually like without knowing the specific patent. We don't know what
Okay.
specific thing
Yeah,
they're going
so-
after.
You know,
So-
obviously there's a lot of public info about what's patented here. So that's like what people are speculating because it seems the most likely, but Nintendo owns a lot of patents. So we'll see what one
Yeah,
or
a ton of
ones
them.
they are planning to unveil.
Next, we saw a Lunar Remaster Collection, which looks very cool. It's got that like crisp pixel art '90s era animation vibe to it, which I've heard these are excellent games. I've never played them. I'm very excited to get a chance to play them because it's both of the first two games, which is very cool. Shredder's Revenge getting some DLC with additional characters.
Cowabunga.
This game was great.
Cowabunga.
This
it does
game
look
was so much fun.
great time
I
playing it.
do want
Very
to
fun.
come back to this game sometime and play all the DLC that's come out because I played through the main game, but not the now Radical Reptiles DLC and the one before that was the boy, I can't think of his name. That ninja samurai rabbit guy.
Oh, Usagi?
Yes,
Usagi Yojimbo
I have
thing?
not played the Usagi Yojimbo one either.
I did not know they made an Usagi Yojimbo DLC. That's very cool.
Yes, Karai and Usagi Yojimbo are the characters in the previous DLC.
Very fun. Sonic Shadow Generations, which is the new Sonic game, is apparently getting what they specified as a tie-in to specific movie scenes and not the movie itself.
What?
Which I don't know what that means.
What?
So this is a tie-in with the Sonic movie, but they're specifying that it isn't like the whole movie. It's like specific scenes. And Keanu Reeves voices Shadow, which I think is very funny.
Oh my god, that's right.
So, yeah, I don't know what to think about this. I've heard people are pretty excited about Generations, Sonic Shadow Generations. Like, the first generation was very well received. So, seems cool.
You never know what kind of you never know what kind of Sonic game you're gonna get because it's just both in quality and design just all
really
over
a
the place.
crapshoot sometimes. After that, we saw Hironobu Sakaguchi showing off Fantasian Neo Dimension, I believe is the full name, but it is the Fantasian port from Apple Arcade with like a ton of advanced or new mechanics and stuff. This looks really cool. Reviews from people that played this are all really good, but it was obviously only on Apple Arcade, and so
Yeah, I forget games that come out like that.
relatively limited exposure. And so I'm very excited to be able to play that on a console. Next, we saw Veilguard, and they showed off a Blighted Dragon trailer that looked really cool, I think. I'm much more into this trailer than the other ones that they've shown.
The combat's definitely probably going to be the most contentious part out of this game, and
I think they maybe made a weird
we'll
choice in
see.
having showing off a mage character here because it's really hard to tell what is hitting and what isn't for a little bit of this, but otherwise it looks good.
Really should have had these trailers come out in reverse order.
Totally. Just scrap that first one. We don't.
Yeah,
need that
I was
first
about
one
to
ever.
say. I would say literally, it's so funny. The marketing after that first trailer has actually been totally fine.
The tone is so different and also so consistent across the later ones, except that first one was like, that really reeks that like they hired a marketing team and that had no real knowledge of the game.
Yeah. But this looks really cool. I love this like action sequence they show. And I really love the design of the main enemies. That is like that crazy sort of like elongated tentacle demon.
Oh yeah.
Which interestingly enough is actually, someone pointed this out, it is the design of the archdemons from the first game that never got used. It was like the concept design for them.
That design is really cool. I forgot about it.
It's super cool, and it's like the old concept design for the archdemons before they became dragons in the actual game, which is really interesting. I think that's a really cool callback to their old stuff.
If I recall right, I may be mistaken because I don't believe I personally played it, but I think there's a funky archdemon that isn't a dragon in maybe the DLC in Origins, but it still doesn't look
so
like that.
There's kind of they're not an archdemon, they're like an awakened thing, which is why it's called Awakening. And they are like a servant technically, but they're also maybe not evil. Maybe they are evil, who knows? That I don't think that plot point's been revisited, so maybe we'll figure that out.
Unfortunately, it sounds like it probably won't be revisited here either.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll talk about Veilguard probably next week a little bit. I think we'll have a lot to say once we get more into it. Or more into the marketing cycle, and as we start to play Inquisition and whatnot. Then we saw Alan Wake 2 Lake House DLC. This looks really cool. It seems like it has to do with the Bureau of Control.
Looks like Control at first.
Oh, I was freaking out because I thought it was Control.
I can't remember.
I lost my mind.
Isn't the Lake House mentioned in Control?
I think so. I think briefly.
Yeah,
I think it's in like a lore doc or two.
Yeah, I think it's fairly early. If I remember right, like the first mention of Alan Wake references the Lake House, but I could be wrong.
Well, the Lake House could be in reference to the house from the first game.
Yeah, I mean, I assume that as well.
Man, whatever happened to Quantum Break?
Oh,
all right. Well, before we get too lost on the trail of
the second game
stuff, I think that's a good point to move on.
Don't get me started on Remedy shit again. I'll keep going.
He'll keep going. Hitman VR. We're getting another collection of Hitman VR things, but this one seems a lot better than the others, maybe, but I'm not sure because there's more than one of them. So there's like 3 or 4 different versions of Hitman VR at this point.
Oh boy.
This one does look cool, though. Next, we had the weird one, which I don't think anyone expected this coming. We're getting Legacy of Kain 1 and 2.
Hell yeah.
Soul Reaver and I forget the name of the other one, but we're getting a collection of 2 Legacy of Kain games, the big 2 that people really like. So I'm very interested in playing these.
I keep hearing really good things about it. It's what Amy Hennig worked on before she worked on Uncharted.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so I'm actually super into.
Oh, it is Soul Reaver 1 and 2 remastered. Yeah.
Because the only
very cool.
Soul Reaver game I've ever played was Nosgoth, which is a dead on arrival multiplayer game that was actually kind of cool.
All right. After that, we see some of the Blumhouse games. One of their first things was, if I can get the name of it, Fear the Spotlight, which I think this looks pretty cool. I'm into the low poly horror aesthetic. Love me some Signalis.
Very PS1, yeah.
The PS1 horror vibes are immaculate, and I think this looks very fun.
Yeah, I feel like it's something that a lot of like real like made by one or two people sort of indie horror games do. So to see that made by what is presumably a larger team with a bigger budget, kind of cool.
Yep.
Seems like it was made for Brett.
Yes.
Totally. Absolutely, this is. Next, we saw Towers of Agazba, which I'm also extremely excited for. This game is like near top of my list in terms of things I'm looking forward to. I think it looks excellent. This is like the very peaceful sort of like open building game where you're in this big like setting that you have to explore with tons of interesting creatures and stuff. It is in November 2024, which is much sooner than I think a lot of us expected, though it will be in early access and not full release.
Which I think is a surprise to no one.
Yeah, not a huge surprise, especially for it coming this early. Dynasty Warriors Origins, we got to see a little bit more of. I think this looks very fun to play when we actually get our hands on it, but not much more additional info here. And we saw Monster Hunter Wilds again. They showed another new monster that looks really cool with like these crazy like tendril ears going all over the place. Very, very fun monster design. Then we saw Lego Horizon Adventures, Wyatt.
Yeah.
We're almost to the thing that you wanted to talk about.
I want it to be a fly on the wall in the boardroom meeting when this happened.
I guarantee it's the same boardroom meeting as the Lego one.
I just don't. How did this come about? This feels like such a random. Like, not that I'm against.
Now, to be clear, Wyatt, are you talking about the Zero Dawn remaster or Horizon Lego? Because they both apply.
Yes, I'm talking about both.
Oh my God.
I don't like if I'm trying to wrap my brain around it. Of all of the licenses that Lego has had their hands in over the years, why Horizon specifically? It's just so strange.
I really feel like this. I don't mean to like crap on Sony too much here, but this really feels to me like something Sony approached Lego to do,
Probably.
rather than
With
the
a
other way
gun to their
around.
head.
To be fair,
Well,
the Lego
You
Tall
will
Neck
take
set is
another
one
of
of the
our
coolest
IPs.
sets that they've ever made.
Oh yeah, and I
Very
actually
rad.
don't
That's
think
the
the
only
Lego
set they've ever
Horizon game looks that bad. I don't think it looks
No.
bad. It's just
No, it
strange.
It's fun.
I just want to know where it came from. That's all
I
wanna-
don't feel like Horizon is a franchise that a kid looks at and goes, "Oh, I would love to build a Lego set of that," and also I would love to play a video game based on the Lego set of that.
I could see
Like,
that.
that's
It's got
two
cool
leaps of
robots.
things.
Yeah.
I don't know. I could see
Um,
that, like small children being into the cool looking robots. I don't know.
Sure.
I could see that, but
I don't know.
I have so many questions.
Yeah, I agree.
I miss Lance Riddick.
I also just wow,
rest in
you
peace.
made it sad.
Nice.
We
Thanks,
all
Alex.
miss Lance Reddick. The thing that is more confusing to me here is the remaster. This is very strange.
Yeah.
To be
It
remastering
feels
for
like
Zero
it feels like
Dawn.
an intentional kick in the nuts to anyone who's wanted a Bloodborne remake.
Yeah,
It's
but I also
it does.
I can't
doesn't
be
it?
that mad about it because it's only a $10 thing. Like you can just get it to upgrade your old version, so I don't feel that bad about it. But I also just feel like
it
this is
feels
like a
such
a
a
But
null
also,
point
my
for
old
me.
version doesn't need an upgrade. It looks
Yeah,
fine.
like it's fine.
it
Mhm.
feels like such a waste of time. Like I don't understand. And like here's the thing, like because we've had a bunch of these like PS5 remasters, right? At the very least, with something like Last of Us 2, they give us a whole new game mode and a ton of cool like behind the scenes stuff of
Mhm.
like unfinished levels and stuff. Like there was a lot of for a $10 upgrade, right? which is what most people did. That I don't think a whole lot of people bought the remaster on its own. Comparatively, anyway, there was a lot in that extra $10 that, if you're really into Last of Us 2, is actually pretty neat. They haven't said much of anything other than mocap faces, which is neat, and I think it's a nice addition, especially because the game is so story focused. But I just don't understand the purpose of this.
Yeah, I don't want to tread too much ground that's already been covered to hell and back, I'm sure, but it just, to me, I feel like a remaster or a remake's purpose is to make accessible, or a remaster would be to make accessible a game that's not accessible anymore. Or, a PS3 game needs a remaster. A PS4 game, playable on the PS5, readily available. Bet it's even been on sale on the PlayStation Store pretty recently.
It also came out on Steam not that long ago.
Yeah, it just doesn't. It doesn't feel like it needs it.
That's the other thing. There would be slightly more of an argument for this, in my opinion, if the game was on PS4 and it was playable on PS5, but there wasn't a 60 FPS mode. Like, even then, that would be something a little bit more. But you can play this game at 60 frames on PS5.
I have done so fairly recently. The game looks great.
Yeah. It's highly unnecessary. I don't know. I don't like. I kind of defended The Last of Us 2 remaster a little bit. I don't get this one.
All right. Well, let's talk about something I think we do get, which is Ghosts of Yotei. Looks amazing. And is absolutely, they knew it was the highlight of the show. They kept it for last. This already looks incredible. It's set about 350 or so years after Ghost of Tsushima. It is Sucker Punch's follow-up to that. In a really interesting and cool time period.
We thought a sequel would cover the second.
Because timeline-wise, it lined up and everything for Jin to be the protagonist again. But I think this is totally a fine call.
I like this more though. I like that it's kind of the series is kind of an anthology and it covers different parts of Japan versus just the same characters again. Especially
because this is set, I believe, in the island that Hokkaido. If I'm remembering my geography correctly, but it is not in Tsushima and is far north and very, very cool location.
New location, new time period lets them explore.
Hey, I'm getting Blue Eye Samurai vibes from this, and boy howdy, if I wanted that show to be a game.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, Erika Ishii killing it so far, from what we've seen.
Oh yeah, she's a great voice actress in everything I've seen her in.
Yeah, I'm very excited for this. I think it looks excellent, and next year as well. So we're not waiting too long.
Yeah, the internet chuds are mad, and they can stay mad.
We will not join them in being mad.
I haven't heard the word chud in so long.
Good word. Sorry, there's a cool-looking game that was announced. I'm gonna go play
whatever it. The wolf is. I'm down for a wolf companion too. I hope that's what this is. Overall, I am very excited about this one. I think this looks really cool.
Yep.
Okay.
Can't wait to see more.
That was a state of play. Fun enough time. It wasn't anything too crazy, but Ghost of Yotei absolutely stole the show, and so we're all very excited now.
Solid.
Quite pumped. Only makes me need to play Ghost of Tsushima more.
Yep.
Yeah, I've not finished that game. I definitely need to.
All right. Well, that said, I think we're done. We've talked about everything. We've covered our games. We've talked about our Dragon Age binge for next time, and we talked about the state of play. So we had lots of things to go over. And on that note, we'll see you next week at the usual time.
This was a good slate of Game Pass games we had this time around.
Yeah,
the quality level
yeah.
pretty high across the board.
Yeah, I really agree.
Good variety too.
I'm gonna find the next person who makes me play an RTS.